Well, Donald Trump has arrived, and how? With a bang, for sure. Hi there, warm welcome. You're watching Blueprint Explosive Exclusive, and I'm Meghna Deka. And let's start first with the big announcements which have been made, as well as the looming midnight deadline, which is coming around the corner, and also the Russia-Ukraine war. But it looks more like a game of chess than a diplomatic effort, honestly. Well, a game whose rules perhaps are not even known to both the players themselves. Well, Trump is very confident that he can end the war within a day. After Ukrainian President Zelensky said that the deal to end the war between Ukraine and Russia is still very, very far away. An outraged US President Donald Trump has now called it the worst statement that could have been made by President Zelensky, and that America will not put up with it for much longer. In fact, Donald Trump has warned that Zelensky won't be around for very long if a ceasefire deal with Russia isn't reached. Listen in first to Zelensky and then Donald Trump. All of this is coming in at a time when you have Elon Musk. Many call him the shadow president. Elon Musk suggesting that Zelensky should be given political asylum somewhere. He should leave so that Ukraine can have a democracy. But let's tell you about the face-off of the two presidents. Zelensky versus Donald Trump.
До угоди про закінчення війни ще дуже далеко. Ніхто всі ці кроки не розпочав. Мир, який ми будемо передбачати в майбутньому, повинен бути справедливим, чесним, а головне сталий мир.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it takes two to tango, and you're going to have to make a deal with Russia, and you're going to have to make a deal with Ukraine. You're going to have the assent, and you're going to have the consent from the European nations, because I think that's important, and from us. I think everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It could be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal, and if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long, because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal.
Now, this statement comes after Trump's heated confrontation with Zelensky in the Oval Office. We all, of course, have been seeing the videos of that. And after the verbal blows came another bitter blow. A pause on the US aid to Ukraine. In fact, let's tell you a bit about the weapons, the military aid to Ukraine by the US administration. You have air defense systems which are being provided by the US to Ukraine, in addition to over 200 howitzers, 40 plus rocket launchers, 10,000 javelins, 50 million rounds of small ammunitions, grenades, 20 Soviet-designed Mi-17 military helicopters also have been provided, along with a whole host of others, such as 1,300 armored personnel, so on and so forth. You can see that list on your screens. But since the war started, the US has provided around $69 billion in military aid to Ukraine. This since Russia's February invasion in 2022. But the future contributions, of course, hang in the balance after Trump administration now ordered has a complete freeze on aid to Kiev. In fact, you can see how much every country had paid. Of course, look at US's line. It goes all the way across to 69 billion. So let's get you a lowdown. You have Germany, which has provided so far $13.6 billion in aid. You have UK, which has provided $10.8 billion, Denmark $8.1 billion, Netherlands at $6.3 billion, $5 billion by Sweden. Poland stands at $3.9 billion. You have France at $3.8 billion and $2.8 billion aid, which is coming in to Kiev from Canada. What does it really show? That there is a disproportionate amount of aid which has been given by US alone, which is not even in the same continent. But let's also tell you how between 24th of January 2022 and the end of 2024, Europe as a whole has essentially spent $138.7 billion on Ukraine. In the same period, as we were showing you, United States has spent $119.7 billion. So we ask, is this an attempt to build pressure? Well, European allies of Ukraine, of course, feel that it will be a pause without the US support. Of course, you have Ukraine finding an even harsher struggle for this survival. But that's not all. there's more. Trump's tariffs have also kicked in. We are talking about the midnight deadline, which is now looming. 25% of the tariffs on imports are going to be imposed on Mexico. What does Mexico say? Well, it says that it is preparing a plan B and a plan C. What does that mean? We'll have to wait and see. 25% tariffs on the imports coming in from Canada as well. Canada says that it is also going to impose 25% tariff on US goods. 10% tariff was already levied on Chinese imports. Add another 10% to it, taking it to 20% levy of Chinese imports. Of course, there are retaliatory tariffs, countermeasures, which even China is looking into. And this is very interesting. There is a reaction coming in from a man who usually doesn't talk about political controversies. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett has now called it an act of war. In fact, in an interview he has said, I'm going to quote him here, you can see that on your screens, tariffs are an act of war to some extent. Over a period of time, they are tax on goods. I mean, the tooth fairy doesn't pay them. Then what? You always ask that in economics, what next? Let that sink in. Well, this is now leading to a meltdown in markets across the entire globe. Dow Jones, let's first get you the American, then we'll get you the Asian and finally the Indian markets. Dow Jones down by 1.5%. S&P 500 down by 1.8%. Nikkei 225 points. Nikkei 225, you have 1.2% down. Then you have Hang Seng Index, which is down by 0.3%. When we look at the Indian stock markets, they've ended in red for the 10th day today. So will India be the next target for reciprocatory tariff? Well, that's the question. In fact, let me go across to our panelists. Today, joining us on the show, we have Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow with the ORF. Dr. Mark Merowitz is joining us, geopolitical expert, joining us live from America. Mark, I'm going to start with you first. We're just telling our viewers what Warren Buffett has said. He said that tariffs are an act of war to some extent. After all, who's going to be paying it? Then what? You always ask that in economics. What next? That's going to be my first question to you. What next, Mark?
If I could predict what's next in Donald Trump's plans, I would be a multi-billionaire compared to what you put up the screen, okay? So let's not go there. I'm going to predict what's going to happen in the world. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have Zelensky in the Oval Office, smiling with Vance and Trump, signing a deal by next week or so, okay? And the tariffs will be removed, and Canada and Mexico are all going to hug the United States. I predict it because, you see, the thing is, Trump is a game changer. He's a shaker-upper. And, you notice that every time he shakes something, something happens. Right? So he did this thing in the White House with Zelensky, which I'd love to talk about my American take on it, because I don't think a lot of people are focusing on how to look at it from the American point of view and Trump's point of view. And as far as the tariffs are concerned, it's shaking it up and seeing what's going to happen. I'm going to make a Riviera on the Gaza. Okay, and Egypt says they're going to fix it. I'm going to put tariffs on Canada. Trudeau is out of office. I'm going to do tariffs on Mexico. Sheinbaum comes running to Mar-a-Lago. I have to say that that open meeting in the White House was so shaking and so shocking that, tonight in the State of the Union, the Democrats apparently are coming with noisemakers and going to disrupt his speech. This is very foolish, but I think we're in a very big upheaval in our politics because we don't know what to expect. But I absolutely assure you that all of this will be resolved, and there will be smiley faces, and working a deal will be a minerals deal and whatever they're going to work out, because I think the pushback from Europe, particularly in the UK, in the parliament, and the fact that the Europeans, and this was again Trump, the Europeans got together. Can you imagine? They actually got together and made a plan, which the Europeans are incapable of doing. They don't know how to do it. They're starting to do it. They want to give money. The UK, they're waking up. It's like a sleeping giant. Europe is waking up. So I think my take on it, besides analyzing the meeting in the White House and the Oval Office, which is worth really talking about, because that one there, I have to say that Zelensky misplayed his hand. Ukraine has a weak hand. This is today's Wall Street Journal, Walter Russell Mead. And he didn't play it right. But at the end of the day, it really needs to get resolved. You know why? Because Trump can't shake up the whole world and destroy the whole world. He can't do that.
He can't do that, but that'll be interesting to see Trump as the binding glue for the entire European Union to actually come together today. But interestingly, here back home in India, and Sushant Sareen, I want you to weigh in here. We know the Prime Minister had gone there earlier. You have Piyush Goyal, who is currently in US. They are in talks with what can India give to ensure that we can duck the tariffs, the reciprocatory tariffs. But then there are several sticking points, isn't there, Sushant Sareen? For example, India doesn't want to budge on the imports which are coming in on agricultural inputs. It is going to hurt the farmers if that happens. What's India's game plan here?
You know, if we had gone ahead with the farming laws that were brought out...
Which were rolled back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Yeah. So if we brought in the farming laws, you know, it would have been a lot easier to make some of these transitions. Look, the point is that if tariffs are so bad, you know, that they will destroy the world economy, then how come the United States does not have such high tariffs, but other countries have tariffs? So I think there is some demand from the US side that, look, you know, we've undergone deindustrialization. And maybe we need to bring industrial manufacturing back. And we saw during COVID, for example, the US was incapable of even making masks at one point of time. Even ordinary things they were running out of because they were so dependent on imports. So I think there is some merit in what Trump is suggesting from an American point of view. From an Indian point of view, I think we also need to be realistic that, you know, you can't keep mollycoddling the farming lobby, the industrial lobby. We need to start becoming much more competitive. We need to start breaking down some of the kind of regulatory barriers that we have imposed upon the productive energies of our people. It's mindless, the kind of regulations, some of the regulations which are there in India. And if supposing this looming trade threat from the US becomes a catalyst for some of the reforms that we very desperately need in India, I would very much welcome it. But Meghna, just a couple of things. You know, look, if the State of the Union address is disrupted and, you know, people are heckling President Trump, it's a scene we've seen, for example, we see it in India, we see it in many other parliaments around the world. So, yeah, it'll be a first for the Americans and fine. I don't think anybody is really going to suffer for it. The other thing is on this whole European thing, you know, I'm not as sanguine about Europe coming together and sticking together as my colleague on this program is. Frankly speaking, you know, what does Europe really bring to the table in terms of hard power anymore? We've seen in Afghanistan when their troops were fighting in Afghanistan, the Brits to some extent, but it was the Americans who were fighting. The other European countries, they would start weeping the moment one or two people died. You know, you're not going to be a serious military power which can then challenge somebody like the Russians or project power outside Europe if you're going to be having this kind of an attitude. So the Europeans actually up their game. And I think what Trump is trying to do, look, he does it in a very unconventional way.
Absolutely.
But he has a plan. And he does it in a very non-diplomatic kind of a way. He does it like, you know, normally you would do business on the streets of New York. He does it in that sense. And not many people are very familiar with that kind of in-your-face kind of negotiating style. But I think he does have a plan. And look...
He has a plan, but as Dr. Merovitz has said, I'd be a millionaire if I could preempt as to what that plan is. But I'll ask you both a simple yes or no question before we let you go, gentlemen. Is the world staring and sitting on the edge of a trade war? Dr. Merovitz, I'll start with you.
I just want to say one thing quickly. It's very important. It has to do with personal relationships. Modi came to America.
Absolutely.
He got a nice welcome. Trump likes him. He's an older man. He's an advisor. He's a very important gravitas. He respects that. Macron he likes. Starmer he likes because Starmer came, gave him an invitation to a state visit with King Charles. Okay, Trudeau is a complete incompetent. He didn't handle it right. Zelensky didn't play it right. So I'm afraid the world's future hinges on how you do this diplomacy.
So it's the
with
chemistry
president
behind
of
the
United-
arithmetics which is going to count, if I can just quickly sum it up. So Shansarin, last words.
No, I think chemistry is definitely very important between leaders. You can't underestimate the importance of chemistry. But look, Trump has a substantial point he's making. What is the plan that the Europeans have to bring an end to the war in Ukraine? Now, if you want to stand on a moral,
There is no exit plan.
There should be no invasion. That's all very well, but that does not stop the war. Can you turn back the Russians? And if the plan of Europeans is that, look, the Russians will tire out if we can keep supporting the Ukrainians can die in large numbers, they can have
3 years they haven't.
If that is the way you want to go about it, then you don't have a plan. Trump has a plan for whatever that plan is worth.
We're going to leave it there, gentlemen. Trump has a plan. We'll have to wait and see what that plan is. He's definitely way too unconventional for us to preempt as to what that plan would be. But he has a plan, and we are hoping, because literally the future of the world seems to be resting on it. Remember, tomorrow morning and right here on Times Now, we are going to get you Trump's speech, which he's going to give in the assembly. And in fact, we have Dr. Merkowitz, who's saying that there's going to be fireworks in the assembly. We'll watch out for that. Thank you so much, Sushant Sareen, as well as Dr. Merkowitz. With that, a short break.